We have been speaking about love and death. And some abhyasis have also wondered how morbid I can become by trying to link such apparently opposed subjects as love and death. Some have even expressed anger. How can you talk of two things in the same breath? So I would like to perhaps conclude this seminar by this final effort at trying to explain how they are not only related but absolutely related. How there must be discipline in life as well as in death, and that discipline is called love. Today when I was thinking of the marriage of Dorina and Jens, so many thoughts came into my mind. Nowadays we have this formality of a civil marriage, going before a registrar and signing on a sheet of paper and saying the registrar married us. He doesn't marry anybody. He only records a fact that two people have chosen to get married. Many people still don't want a civil marriage. Nowadays we are made to accept it because of legal compulsions. It is not really a marriage. It is something that two people decide to do, and they go to the registrar and say, we would like to exchange rings in front of you. We want to get married in your presence. And he says, okay, you find two witnesses. Anybody off the streets would do. So you put on the rings, grin at each other, sign the paper, get it witnessed, and somehow go out feeling, that the whole thing has been a farce. You must ask yourself this question: why people want to be married in our satsang? I insist that they get their marriage registered later by civil authority because it's a legal requirement. But why do they wish to get married here? Even couples who have been married already, they come to me and say, I would like to be married again in the spiritual way. So the difference is the idea of holiness, you see. One is a very profane type of marriage. Here it is a holy marriage. So this idea of holiness is something I would like to talk about, because it is a feeling, it is a spirit, it is an attitude we should cultivate. For instance, when the prasad is put on the ground, you may say, well, there are wonderful carpets here. It is not like an Indian house where there is dust and water and ugliness on the ground perhaps. It has nothing to do with cleanliness. In Europe, even toilets are clean. That doesn't mean you can just close the bowl of the toilet and put the prasad on top of that. What is it that makes the prasad not to be put there? It is the idea of holiness. There is something holy in it which must not be profaned by subjecting it to the indignities of lower values. I don't think anybody would put his bowl of soup on a closed bowl of the toilet. It is clean. Would you put your soup on it while you brush your teeth and then eat it there? If not, why the prasad? So you see this idea of holiness, that there are certain things which are holy, that there are certain places which are holy. people who are holy, we have to bring back into our everyday life and not just reserve them for our churches and our temples and for special occasions. What is holy is always holy. What is profane is always profane. When I go to Paris and see this church, what they call this, the Church of the Sacré-Cœur, the Sacred Heart. What is sacred about that heart? And what is not sacred about your hearts? It is the profanity and the holiness that is the difference. One heart is full of love, of divine grace, of divine sentiments, always thinking of the others and not of itself. The other is full of vice, mushy sentiment, selfishness, seeking for itself. Therefore, it is a profane heart. In marriage, most of all, we should try to re-inculcate this principle of holiness. That is why it is called, in the language of the church, holy matrimony. It must be made holy. The partners to the marriage must understand, must accept, must feel that this is a holy alliance of two people. Marriage is not something just legalizing two people going to bed together. That is the modern idea, you see. In fact, the modern idea is that to do it, you do the marriage after you have done everything else. That is putting the, what shall I say, cart after the horse. If there is a holy feeling about love, it cannot be profanized until that holiness has become an established fact between two people, and in that holy atmosphere, they involve themselves in matrimonial life, in all its aspects. Then in that Holy Spirit, whatever is done is holy. The fruits of those actions are holy. After all, if a mere prasad, which you take and eat, can transform your inner self, what is it in that prasad which is just a bag of resins or some sweets or chocolates? What is it in the resin that makes it now a prasad? Which, if you have really understood its significance, you will not throw on the floor, which you will not trample upon. There is something. We have to bring that something into our lives. And when we bring that something into our lives, it takes over, we cease to exist, and therefore there is death. I don't mean physical death, mortal death. I mean death in the real sense that the person ceases to exist for himself. This must be an established fact in marriage. The husband's sole concern must be his wife, not himself. He must be giving, not receiving. The wife's sole concern must be her husband. She must be giving all the time, not receiving. Now imagine the magnificence of such a union, you see, where each is only concerned with giving himself and herself totally. What bliss can result out of such a marriage? Whereas if each one is intent only on taking, what a misery that marriage becomes, what a sham. It is always a truth that you can never take more than what somebody will give. You have only to think of any situation you like. Nobody can take from another more than what the other person is willing to give. And if the other person is not willing to give anything, you get nothing, even in marriage. So when you are thinking only of yourself and taking and taking and taking, the more of this attitude comes into play in your interrelationship, the less you get. Whereas if you are thinking all the time of giving and giving and giving, the more you give, the more you get. This is the idea of holiness. Babuji Maharaj used to say, I am here, loot me. But it was not possible. Nobody can loot anybody else. Babuji Maharaj said, I am willing to give everything I have and much more, but there is nobody fit to receive it. Now, one of the failings in Abhyasis was that they went to him without this idea of holiness. Hey Master, hey Babuji, hey Ramchandra. You see, there must be a certain respect for a person from whom you are going to get so much that you cannot even account it. You cannot even know it, what you have got. After all, in a relationship of love, what is it that you have got which makes you so happy? It is the love of the other. If Babuji yet gave and gave and gave, it was because his life was dedicated to giving and giving and giving. For him there was no consideration of how he was to be treated, what attitude the Abhyasis had to accept. He tried to teach. I think the prasad is essentially an institution to teach us the difference between raisins and prasad. But how many of us over these 25 years have understood this difference, have recognized this difference, have felt this difference? How many of us still munch away at the raisins thinking they are raisins? I think a majority still do. Fortunately, there are a few who appreciate that there is something behind this, there is something in it, which for me is an agency of transformation. So similarly, when there is love between two persons, whether husband and wife, father and son, mother and daughter, friends, guru and disciple, if this real love is there between the two, there will automatically develop a mutual respect, a mutual regard, even a mutual adoration, perhaps even a mutual worship. Because friendship must ripen into love, love must ripen into adoration, adoration must ripen into worship, into surrender, and then into the extinction of the self. Therefore, you see, loving is dying. To love is to die. And when you cease to exist in love, that is, I must be alive so that I can enjoy my love, bask in my love, drown myself in my own love, that is narcissistic, psychologically speaking, and it is destructive. So to say that love and death are linked is also a lesser truth than to say that love is death. Truly, when you love, you seek only the other, you think only of the other. Only the other exists, you don't exist. It is love which gives form to substance, to essence. When you see a simple mote of dust dancing in a beam of light, it is the light which illuminates that mote of dust. And if the mote of dust was to think, oh, look at me, how grand I am, how beautiful I am, look at the glitter and the glamour of my existence, next second it is out of the beam of light and it has fallen back. Dust thou art, and to the dust thou shalt return. A wind takes up a puff of dust, whirls it around into a tiny whirlwind, and there it goes dancing along the pavement merrily, you see. An inverted cone, drunk in its own movement, in its own capacity to move, in its form, in the dance of the wind. And if the dust thinks, here I am, look at me, how wonderful I am, the wind lets go and the dust is back on the pavement from which it came. The spirit takes up matter, makes it fit for itself, embodies it itself. And there you have a body, white, black, tall, short, it doesn't matter. And when this idea comes that this body is so wonderful, this body is so beautiful, this body is so attractive, the ego comes, the love of the self comes, the narcissistic love comes, selfishness comes, and love goes out of the door. That is why today there is so little love in this world. It is all self, self, self. So what is necessary to bring back the bliss of love, the glory of love, the transcendental experiences of love, and the ability to transcend love itself into a final extinction of the self, to die to oneself, which is what Babaji Maharaj in spiritual terms called the living death, the living dead. What is necessary? First of all, you must make the person you love more and more lovable in your own estimation. That is why we have this, ancient ritual of beautifying temples, beautifying the idol, beautifying it with jewelry, with silks, with garlands. Why a bride is dressed up to be beautiful, why a bridegroom puts on his best suit, shaves himself, perfumes himself. Because to the lover, to the beloved I should say, the lover must prostrate in obeisance, not obeisance in the French sense of obedience, but in an act of worship. Love is worship. Where there is worship, the other is, I won't say superior because superior and inferior are worldly terms, is in some sense adorable. Therefore we have the adoration of the Magi, for instance. See, they who brought the gifts not merely of camphor and myrrh and things like that, but the gift of their presence, their wisdom, their blessing. When somebody comes to adore, he brings something with him. It would be wrong to think that the baby Christ was already so great that the three wise men from the east came to adore him. They came to adore the potential that was yet in him. They came to bless him and said, all this you have in you, exploit it, bring it out, let it shine, even if it is to end in your crucifixion and death. The baby Christ was not worshipable, in my opinion. This may go against theological Christianity or Christian theology. It is only in the expression of that which is hidden in us, the potential, that we can achieve such value of life as we are bestowed with, endowed with. Every child is potentially divine. Nothing makes Jesus the baby more divine than another baby. What made him divine was his achievement. He is forgetting himself, he is learning the art of helping others, his dedication to the others, finally he is giving up his life for the sake of others. That is what gave him such divinity as he possesses, not his birth. But unfortunately religion wants to cover up and mystify, and therefore you have all this theological nonsense of a virgin birth, etc., etc. You see. I sometimes suspect that the inhuman treatment given to our women in this world, especially in the West, can be ascribed in no small measure to this nonsense of the virgin birth of Christ. It is as if Christ's birth would have been dirty had he been born in the normal way, and therefore they seek to make it something of a mystery, something unhuman, inhuman, casting upon woman a defilement, a corruption through the agency of the church, so that men have come to look upon women as something dirty, ugly, to be used and thrown away. I would squarely blame the church for this. If men today look upon women as nothing more than what they call mere chattel, part of the blame at least is the Christian theology. This is my humble opinion. Now, how can you love such a woman? How can you worship her, adore her? You can only use, like in Christianity, Christ uses his mother. She is still the Mother Mary, the Holy Mother. If that was so, why not a normal birth as any other human being? So you see, in divinizing one, we should not make other profane. In divinizing the child, the mother should not be made a profane object. In giving the child a divinity, the mother should not become something of a devil. That is, in ennobling one, the other should not fall. Therefore, we have this mystery and spirituality. Service without servility. As Babuji emphasized again and again. We serve, but we are nobody's servants. Servants serve for money, out of fear, for existence. We serve because we love. So in marriage too, there must be this idea of service. The wife serving the husband serving the wife. There's nothing wrong in a woman bringing a pair of shoes and polishing it for her husband if he is busy. This happens every day in India. See. Here people would say, what is this? Because here you have this, absolute contradiction that on one side you have neither love nor respect for your women, on the other socially you put them on a pedestal and pretend to ennoble them. Put them in silks, put them in rouge, put them in lipstick, satin, gold, diamonds. For what? For your pleasure. There is no love behind all this. There is only selfishness. My wife is beautiful. I can bring her a glass of water, but she should not get up to give me a glass of water. Women must remain seated and extend a limp hand when somebody is introduced. They are too fragile. But later on, after the party is over, what happens? It would be a mild statement to say there is only rape after that. This is my body, it is for my pleasure, this is my bed, this is my satin, this is my silk, this is my Georgians and flower vase. I have absolute right over this. So you see the absolute, utter contradiction. Love in one way, brandishing, beautifying the object that it is supposed to be loved in public, putting it to shameful, dishonorable use in private. This is the tragedy of this so-called modern love. Because you want to live even at the cost of the other. So here, love does not mean death, love means life. There is no holiness anymore in matrimony. There is only perversity. There is only humiliation. There is subjecting somebody to your will. So how can such a love flourish? A slave will try to break his chains and run away. You cannot blame a slave for it. Throughout history, slaves have tried to run away. They have died in the process. Today you find people breaking the marriage bond, trying to run away, dying in the process too. So you see, if you don't die in love, you will have a different type of death in fear, hatred, sorrow, misery. Death is inevitable. One death is unglorious, painful, miserable, self-destructive. The other death is glorious, worshipful, full of love, full of what in Christianity they call the beatitude. So all that we do when we inculcate our children and ourselves with the spirit of holiness, with the attitudes of holiness, the ability to worship that which we love, to adore that which we love, to surrender to that which we love, to finally die for that which we love, We are seeking a form of death which transcends death. It is no longer death. I die without dying. Death for me no more exists. It is erased from the slate of my existence in eternity. Such a person never dies because he has died to himself, by himself. For such a person, death can have no fears. Since he cannot die, we call such persons immortal. They are there forever. Their love is inextinguishable. Why is it inextinguishable? Because they no longer love, they are love. So you see how closely love and death are linked. To die in love means to live forever. To die thinking of yourself, in your selfishness, in your own personal vainglory, is to die forever. So one is the way to immortality, the other is the way to hell, to recurrence, eternal recurrence, as one psychologist has called it, again and again and again, until we learn to love, to sacrifice, to die to ourselves. So I think at least on the occasion of a marriage, it is very important to understand these things and to try to bring into your lives these values that must be cherished. We must seek them first, find them, cherish them, help them to grow in us until the values remain and we are gone. In such a society, values will continue to exist when people have gone. No people go leaving behind what? Statues, books, names carved on stone or on newspaper tabloids. Therefore, we feel even today Babuji's presence, and we shall continue to feel it forever. Because his presence was nothing more than his life of love and sacrifice, which took up a body to show itself to us, to train us to adopt those values, to make them grow in us, until when, having become like him, his body was no longer necessary, the spirit let go, and there you have the mystery of dust thou art, and to the dust thou shalt return. Thank you.
Kesa